Hey first graders, today, Wednesday, April 15th, we are going to have two read alouds actually. And those read alouds, one of them is going to be Looking Through a Telescope, which we've already read once, but we're just going to do a quick read of that again. And then another book called If You Decide to Go to the Moon. So we're going to start with Looking Through a Telescope. And parents, make sure you all have the list of vocabulary words for our entire unit. They are listed on Class Dojo, but we have completed all of those words. Today is day 21. Tomorrow will be our end of unit task. So this is our final read aloud for this space unit. We will be completing another collaborative anchor chart, and this one will be labeled with the first book we're going to read. So observations that can be made by a telescope. So we're going to use Looking Through a Telescope to help us write down different observations that can be made when we look through a telescope. Then when we read If You Decide to Go to the Moon, that's going to focus on space travel. And so we're going to list observations that can be made through space travel versus just looking through the telescope. So go ahead and get a sheet of paper so that as we read these two books, you can start writing down observations of things that we can see through a telescope. So, Looking Through a Telescope by Linda Bullock. Hey diddle diddle. Did a cow really jump over the moon? That's from the nursery rhyme. Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon. The little dog laughed to see such craft, and the dish ran away with the spoon. So did a cow really jump over the moon? Of course not. Cows eat grass in a field. Cows sleep in a barn. Cows cannot jump over the moon. The moon is a big ball of rock. It is too big to jump over. It is also far away. This is why we cannot see how big it really is. Look at the moon. What does it look like? Is it bright? Is it shaped like a ball? You can use a telescope to see what the moon really looks like. A telescope is a science tool. It lets us get a closer look at things that are far away. So, what is a telescope? In your own words, think of a definition of a telescope. Then, tell it to someone in your family. You can see that the moon is big and round with a telescope. You can see many craters on the moon. Craters are the round holes that are not deep. You can also see Maria on the moon. Maria are large areas of dark rock. Some people say that they can see faces in the Maria. What do you see? So far, what kind of observations can you make by looking through a telescope? What words or sentences could we add to our chart at this point? So you can observe the moon being big and having many craters, and you can also observe the Maria on the moon. Telescopes can also help you see planets in space. Planets are big objects like Earth that go around the sun. Without a telescope, a planet looks like a dot of light in the sky. You can also use a telescope to see stars. Stars are balls of gas. Some look yellow or red through a telescope. Others look blue or white. So now we can add to our chart that we can also observe planets and stars through a telescope. Some telescopes are as big as buildings. Scientists use them to see things really far away. You cannot see some of these things without using a telescope. Scientists have even put a big telescope into space. It can see things that telescopes on Earth cannot. It is called a Hubble Space Telescope. The Hubble Space Telescope has taken pictures of big clouds of gas, dust, and stars. These pictures help scientists learn how stars form. So what else can we observe with the Hubble telescope specifically? How is that Hubble telescope unique? What do you want to look at through a telescope? Will you look at a star? What about a planet? Look again. So the text asks, what do you want to look at through a telescope? Which space object that the book talks about do you want to see the most, and why? Okay, so now we are going to read If You Decide to Go to the Moon. Make this a little bigger. So, this is by Faith McNulty and illustrated by Stephen Kellogg. If you decide to go to the moon. Give me a second. It will tell you how to get there and what to do after you land. The most important part tells you how to get home. Check the things you will need: spacesuit, air tanks, books, and games. Don't forget your diary and plenty of food. Peanut butter, apples, and cake will taste good in space. Water and juice are also important. To get to the moon, you will travel about 240,000 miles, a long trip, but rocket ships go fast. If you average 3,750 miles per hour, you will get there in 2.5 days. Oh, I'm so sorry. We missed the first page. If you decide to go to the moon in your own rocket ship, read this book before you start. So, it tells you how to get started. Get aboard, close the hatch, light the burners. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off! You shoot up, up, up into the sky. As your ship rises through the clouds, your body is pressed against the seat. At first, you feel very heavy. Don't worry, this feeling will go away. For a few seconds, you fly through a mixture of clouds and air and dust that hangs over the Earth. It is not very thick, only about 15 miles. You will shoot right through it into space. Space is a dark and empty place. There is no air in space, no clouds, no rain, only a few specks of dust, some rocks called meteors, and some chunks of ice called comets. Both meteors and comets are pieces of stars that exploded long ago and have been flying around in space ever since. If you hit one of them, it could be very bad. But space is so big, and you are so small that a collision is unlikely. In the blackness of space, the stars shine like a million fireflies. The sun blazes with fiery light, and the moon, the mysterious moon, glows like a pearl in the black, black sky. Of course you know that the moon has no light of its own. It glows in the light of the sun. Up here in space, you may feel very alone. Don't look back at Earth. It would make you even lonelier. But this is the time to play some cheerful music, eat a peanut butter sandwich, keep your eyes fixed on the shining moon, and settle down for a long ride. So far, what is the author telling us about in this book? What is the author telling us? And it has listed several objects in outer space. What are some of the space objects that the boy may see? Let's see. Okay. Relax. Take off your seatbelt and be prepared for a surprise because you are weightless in space. You'll feel amazingly light. You will float like a feather inside the cabin and bounce off the cabin walls. You'll bounce very lightly and find it a lot of fun. When you are thirsty, don't try to pour orange juice into a glass. With everything weightless, it could collect into floating liquid balls and become an orange juice blob. You can drink out of a squeeze bottle instead. After supper and a squeeze of juice, it's time for bed. Tie yourself to your bunk so you won't float away, and settle down for a good night's sleep. Of course, there is no night in space. You'll have to pretend. Try to have sweet dreams. When you wake, you will be much closer to the moon. It will be big and round and very bright, with dark patches that look like lakes or seas. They were made billions of years ago, when the moon was very hot enough to melt stone. Now and then, melted stone spurted up through the crust and spread out on the surface, like spilled soup. When it cooled, it hardened into stone, called lava. From Earth, these smooth, dark places look like oceans. Playing cards will help to pass the time, but if you drop them, they will drift around the cabin like butterflies. Floating around to catch them feels like swimming in a dream. The first humans to go to the moon landed on the Sea of Tranquility. It is marked on your moon map and would be a good place to land. But you will still have a very long way to go. When you are tired, lie down and look at the stars. On Earth, you see only the stars that are above you. Up here, there are stars in every direction. You might write in your diary, I wonder how far space goes and where it ends. So, what might the main character observe about the sun and the moon? Continue to listen to the text evidence to find your answers. What words or sentences could we add to our chart so far about observations that we could make when traveling through or with space travel? So he's mentioned that space is dark. He saw comets and meteors. And so far, that's about all that we have added. At last, when you have read all your books and played all your games, you wake up from a nap and see the moon right there below you. You look down on an endless desert. Everything is all one color, silvery gray. The ground is covered with rocks and round craters. Craters are holes made by meteors that have rained down on the moon through the ages. Some were huge and made deep holes, hundreds of miles across. Of course, you steer clear of the rocky places. So what does the text say you might see on the moon? How does this connect with the other texts that we have read about the moon? And using information from the text so far, what are craters? At last, you see a lava lake below, the sea of tranquility. Get ready to land. As you descend, your craft shivers and shakes. It settles softly. You feel a bump. You are on the moon. Your first look will be disappointing. All you see through your porthole is a cloud of dust stirred up by your landing. Put on your spacesuit and air tank while you wait for it to settle. Then open the hatch and jump out. You will land lightly. The moon is smaller than the Earth and has less gravity to pull you down. If you weigh 60 pounds on Earth, you will only weigh 10 on the moon. Your first step will be difficult. You will rise in the air and leap forward like a kangaroo. But once you learn how to walk, walking will be fun. Each step takes you 5 times as far as a step on Earth. Leaping over boulders and craters, you cover the ground with magical swiftness. The moonscape is strange, but it doesn't look dangerous. The dust reminds you of cake flour. You wish you could take off your suit and play in it. But don't do it. The heat of the sun would burn you up. Because there is no air or water on the moon, there are no clouds to shield it from the heat of the sun or the cold of space. Anything touched by the sun is blistering hot. Anything in shadow is instantly cold. Without a spacesuit, you would sizzle or freeze. So, what does the author tell you? Why does the author tell you astronauts should not remove their spacesuits? What does the word shield mean in this text? How does this word help you know more about the moon? As you walk, you will notice that your boots don't crunch on the pebbles. If you take a hammer and hit a rock, there's no bang. It is impossible to make a noise on the moon. Without air to carry sound waves, you can't hear a bell ring. You can't hear a horn blow. You can't hear a whistle or a song on the moon. If you kick a pebble, it will bounce without a sound. As you keep walking, the silence and stillness are eerie. Nothing moves. The boulders and hills have strange shapes. Some hills look like dinosaurs. Some boulders look like giant turtles, or weird birds, or a herd of cows. A heap of jagged rocks looks like a ruined castle. You feel as if you might be in a fairy tale. Or is it a dream? Your map tells you that the astronauts' camp is just over the next hill. As you climb, you wonder if things will look different on the other side. Will you find something green, something alive, a meadow of moon grass, a herd of moon cows? The answer is no. The hills stretch on to the horizon where the rim of the moon meets the blackness of space. Everything on the moon is lifeless and still. To find the astronauts' camp, climb to the top of a boulder and use your binoculars to scan the distance. Look for a patch of color, the red, white, and blue of the flag that the astronauts left behind. It will stand out against the gray dust. As you get close to the camp, you will see everything the astronauts left behind. Strewn amidst the lunar dust, tools and equipment are scattered about. Their boot prints look fresh, as though they were made a moment ago. There's no wind or rain to wear them away. The astronauts left a message for anyone who visits the moon. You find it written on a plaque. Here, men from planet Earth first set foot on the moon, July 1969. But the flag they planted isn't flying. The flagpole was blown over from the blast when the astronaut took off, and the flag is lying in the dust. You pick it up and push it deep into the sand. The flag is stiffened with wire so that it looks as though it is flying, even though there is no wind. It is a brave and wonderful sight and reminds you of the courage of the astronauts who brought it here. If astronauts ever return, they will find the flag flying once again and your footprints in the dust. So let's think about some of the words and illustrations from the last few pages. What observations is the boy making about the moon? Use words and illustrations to help justify your answer. And how could we use that to help us add to our chart? So he described mountains and valleys on the moon. The moon is lifeless. There is no air on the moon. And without protection, you will burn on the moon. So those are things you can observe through space travel versus just looking through a telescope. By now, your tank of air must be half empty. It's time to return to your ship. Your trail of footprints will lead you back. You retrace your steps in leaps and bounds. When you see your spaceship waiting, you are suddenly terribly homesick. You can't wait to get back to Earth. Take a last look at the moonscape, get aboard, close the hatch, and pray that the computers will start. You push buttons, lights flicker, machinery whirs, rockets fire, your ship lifts off. Your heart lifts too, but you have thousands of miles to travel. You'll have to be patient. Whenever you feel discouraged, look through your porthole. You will see a beautiful sight. Earth, surrounded by stars, shining like a blue and white ball on a Christmas tree. The nearer you get to Earth, the more wonderful Earth will seem. Finally, you are close enough to see the continents and the oceans. You can see clouds and rain and wind moving across them, connecting everything on Earth. So what observations did the boy make about the Earth while he was in space? As you look down at the oceans, you think of all the animals that live there, fish and whales and seals, turtles, dolphins, soaring seabirds, and countless more. You can see the snow cap at the North Pole and imagine great white bears wandering over the ice floes. You can see Earth's marvelous variety, green forest and grassy plains, mountains, lakes, and deserts that are home to animals, plants, and people too. Why is Earth so different from the moon? Earth has air and water on which all life depends. Without them, Earth would be as lifeless as the moon. Your trip is almost over. Your ship has reached the atmosphere. You drop down through the clouds and land on green grass. You jump out, thankful for a miraculous journey and a safe return. As you bend down, you kiss the ground. You promise you will always do your best to protect all life on our beautiful Earth. Why are observations about the Earth and space important? Alright, so you should have finished your chart about things that you can observe through the telescope and through space travel. And the last thing that you need to do is complete task number 21. So this is our last task before the big final end of unit task. And this task is asking you to think about or imagine that your parents have won a choice of 2 different raffle tickets. One would send you on a trip through space, and the other would get you a gigantic telescope. Would you rather make observations about Earth and space by using a telescope or by traveling through space, and why? Convince your parents which raffle ticket they should choose. So in your writing, be sure to state your opinion. Include some reasons for your opinion. So support your opinion, use vocabulary words from this unit, and provide a sense of closure. An example might sound like, I would rather travel in space than look through a telescope. When you fly in a spaceship, you can see the moon up close. You can learn things that you couldn't learn by just looking through a telescope. Like that, the moon has no air and there are no sounds on the moon. You can also see more stars when you are in space. I want to travel in space. Please, Mom and Dad, choose the trip through space. If you all have any questions about this task or these read-alouds today, just let me know.